6. In the last part that was read by Mrs. Ross, there was a lot about Miss Clegg's guinea pig, lots of bogies, and of course donuts. So I'm going to continue where she left off. Get comfortable. Meanwhile, Mrs. McDonald showed no interest in any of us. She was standing over the guinea pig cage, pushing Mr. Wiggles' fat rear end back onto his exercise wheel whenever he tried to get off it. At this point, Mr. Noblet came in. Mr. Noblet is our head teacher. He's friendly and enthusiastic. Everyone likes him, even though he has a moustache and wears socks and sandals instead of shoes. "Hey guys, sorry for invading your space," said Mr. Noblet. "Mind if I whiz an idea past you, all of you?" "If you must," sighed Mrs. McDonald, closing the door of the cage and posting a piece of lettuce through the bars. Mr. Noblet gave her the thumbs up. "So, every year after the tests are finished, we get Year 6 to host a tea party for some of the senior citizens from the retirement home down the road," he said. A few people shuffled in their chairs. He laughed. "Don't worry, they won't bite." "One of them did last year," yawned Miss Clegg. "Well, yes," said Mr. Noblet, "but they've promised not to bring her this time. Anyway, it's a wonderful chance to show off how great you all are. We'd love a few people to help Mrs. McDonald to organise it." "Like I haven't got enough on my plate," mumbled Mrs. McDonald. Mr. Noblet clapped his hands. "Come on, guys, who's going to do something amazing today?" Everyone suddenly became very interested in their shoes. "Anybody?" Very slowly, Jane's hand went up. "Will there be money to spend on snacks?" I thought. I had a sneaky suspicion of what she was up to. Mr. Noblet tilted his head slightly. "And why do you need to know? To give the old people a really lovely time," she continued quickly. "A very kind thought," said Mr. Noblet. "Of course the school will provide plates of biscuits for them." Jane thought for a moment, then glanced very quickly at me. "I think I'd like to do it," she said. There was a funny look on her face, like a person who just remembered where they'd left an entire family bag of Monster Munch. Rosie Taylor screwed up her face and shoved her hand up as well. I don't think she really wanted to do it, but she doesn't like it when other people are in charge of things. Then, next to me, Gamble's hand went up too. "Just the two of you?" said Mrs. McDonald, scanning the room. "Three, miss," said Gamble, bouncing around. Mrs. McDonald spoke over him. "Only 2 girls. What about a boy?" Gamble was straining so much he looked like his neck might explode. "I'm a boy, miss. Over here, miss. I'll cook for 'em, miss." Mr. Noblet looked over to Gamble. "Yes, what about that?" "Trust me, Keith. Don't even go there," Mrs. McDonald said sharply. "Yeah, we want to feed them, not poison them," muttered Miss Clegg. Gamble pushed back his chair and crawled under his table in a sulk. "Is there anyone else?" sighed Mr. Noblet. "Roman will do it," said Jane. What?" I said. Normally I try not to get involved in, well, anything, really. Mr. Noblet squinted. "Which one's Roman?" "Unbelievable. I know I'm pretty good at keeping my head down at school, but come on, I've been coming here for 7 years. I raised my hand. Mr. Noblet nodded, as though suddenly remembering who I was. "Ah, great to have you aboard, if you're keen." I was about to say, "Not really," when Jane piped up, "He told me he'd love to." "Did I?" I said. Why was she involving me in this? "Yes, remember," she said, winking. Then she dropped her voice to a whisper. "There'll be snacks, and we can spend more time together." I tried to smile, my face burning as everyone in the class stared at me. That sounds good. I really wasn't sure if this was actually good or not. "Plus, you owe me one," she said. This was definitely not good. "I don't want Roman to help," said Rosie. "Him and Jane will spend the whole time eating donuts and planning their wedding." Mr. Noblet acted as if he hadn't heard and gave me a double thumbs up. "Good man for volunteering, Roland." "Roman," I said as Mr. Noblet left the room. Jane rubbed her hands together, then went back to her work. The room was quiet again, apart from the sound of Mr. Wiggles eating his lettuce and Gamble gnawing on a table leg. -50 doughnuts. At the start of lunchtime, and before I'd had the chance to escape, Jane chaired the first meeting of the Old People's Tea Party Committee, i.e. her, Rosie and me. It was an absolute disaster. For a start, I was annoyed at being there. This wasn't because I don't like old people. It was because Tuesdays are the best days for school dinners. If you get in early, it's hot dogs, followed by profiteroles, which are like doughnuts but filled with cream and covered in chocolate. Not as good as the real thing, but still better than a kick in the throat. Obviously, these are the popular choices, so they run out fast. If you're late, all that's left is cheese omelette. Looks and tastes like an old train at Insole. And fruit. Pointless except in starbursts and jam. The other two didn't seem too bothered about this. I was doomed. We sat down round a table. Mrs. MacDonald had put Mr. Wiggles into one of those plastic balls that rodents run around in on the floor. She was lying down next to him, clapping her hands and saying, "Let's hustle," and "Sweat is just the fat crying," and "Faster, you want to fit into that special Spider-Man costume Mummy made you, don't you?" Yes, I thought the last one was a bit weird too. Mr. Wiggles sat completely still, his flabby body spreading out across the bottom of the ball like a bag of custard. "OK," said Jane. "Lots to organise, so let's get started. What's first?" "Roman shouldn't be allowed to help," Rosie said. She was brushing her hair and she paused for a moment to get rid of a tangle. "He's weird and horrible." I said nothing. Although the last 4 words weren't very nice, I have to say I didn't mind the first bit. "That's my boyfriend you're talking about," said Jane. "Anyway, Roman's agreed to provide the cakes for the tea party." "I have?" I said. "Good. About time he did something nice," Rosie said, taking a quick glance in her handheld mirror to check her hair was perfect. Jane ignored her. "Yes, the school's offered to buy some biscuits, but I think the old people deserve better than a few rich tea, don't you? You'll need to bring the money tomorrow." "Maybe we should vote on that," I said. "Well, you did let Darren Gamble steal my doughnut," Jane said, smiling in a way that was kind and slightly threatening at the same time. "So I vote that you should." "I agree with Jane," said Rosie. 2 votes to 1. "Cough up the dosh, sucker." "So I found out how many are coming," said Jane, "and just the 47 doughnuts should do it." "47?" I spluttered. "That's almost 1 million." Jane put on a baby voice. Womey," she said. "You'll get the doughnuts, won't you? For me." There was a long pause. "And for the old people, of course," she added quickly. "But I don't have 47 doughnuts," I protested. 49, Jane replied. "Hold on, you said 4... Jane tickled me under my chin like I was a flipping donkey. "Well, you might as well get 2 from me while you're at it." "2? You know, one to replace the one that Darren Gamble stole, and the other because, well, I just want another one." "But I don't have 49 doughnuts either," I protested. "You don't need the doughnuts, silly romy-womy," Jane said. "You just need the money for the doughnuts." "How am I supposed to get hold of that money?" "That sort of money," I spluttered. Rosie folded her arms. "Told you he was nasty. Now he wants the old people to starve to death as well." "That's it. Mrs. MacDonald," she called, staring right at me. "Mrs. MacDonald, Roman's trying to kill some old people." "Don't do that, Roman," said Mrs. MacDonald, not looking up. Carefully, she rolled the exercise ball down a ramp she'd made out of dictionaries and atlases. It trundled across the floor, bashed into a chair leg, and then came to a stop. Mr. Wiggles looked at her grumpily. OK, I said. "I'll try, but I can't Excellent," said Jane. "Don't forget the money tomorrow. Mrs. MacDonald said she'd go and buy them for us." Mrs. MacDonald rolled the ball back up to the top of the ramp and waved her hand to us. Yes, whatever. I've got to get loads of salad for Mr. Wiggles anyway." "And you'd better give me your mobile number so I can contact you," Jane said. "Do you really need it?" I asked. My mobile phone is actually just my dad's old one. I've only ever had one text from Mum, so I gave up charging it about 3 months ago. Ever since then, it's been gathering dust at the back of my bedside drawer. Boyfriends and girlfriends should stay in touch at all times, said Jane, passing me a piece of scrap paper. I copied my number down for her. If I'm buying the doughnuts, what are you two going to do? Well, I'm organising the whole thing, said Jane. Rosie flicked back her oh-so-wonderful hair. And I'm going to be the one who meets and greets the old people, of course, because I'm the most fabulous. I rolled my eyes. Well, there's no way we'd let a little freak like you near them, is there? She said, making a loser sign with her hand. Everyone in the class will meet them, said Mrs. MacDonald, shoving the exercise ball down a ramp again and still not looking over. Rosie looked at me, her eyebrows raised. What? Even that? Rosie, why are you being so mean to my boyfriend? Said Jane. Is it because you're jealous? Rosie's slug's bum mouth tightened. What? Well, Roman's mum said you used to want to marry him, said Jane innocently. I'm sorry if I've stolen him from you. www.imgoingtopuke.com, said Rosie. She turned up her nose and flounced out. Jane put her hand over her mouth. Oops, sensitive. Can't have her being mean to my Romy-Womy though, can I? Especially when you've got such an important job to do. Now, what about the entertainment? I tuned out as Jane spouted on at me about sing-alongs and dance routines. How was I meant to get hold of enough money for 49 doughnuts by Friday? Plus, I needed a doughnut for myself as well. I'd never gone a whole day without one before. I was worried that if I didn't get one soon, there was a good chance I'd die. I did some sums in my head. I had 0 doughnuts, and I needed 50. Therefore, by my calculations, it turned out I officially owned minus 50 doughnuts. I tried to figure out what this looked like, but it made my head hurt, so I had to stop. Eventually, Mrs. MacDonald ended the meeting so she could go off to find some bubble wrap. She wanted to make Mr. Wiggles a special sweatsuit to help him lose more weight when he did exercise. I don't think that guinea pigs actually sweat, but I was so glad to escape that I didn't say anything. Lunch was absolutely rubbish. There wasn't even any omelette left, so all I got were cold chips and a couple of really depressed-looking fish fingers. Of course, the profiteroles had all run out. In fact, after she stormed out of the meeting, Rosie had nabbed the last 4. She spent 10 minutes slowly eating them while looking right at me, just to rub it in. Then she announced to the whole room that she was full up and tipped the last one into the bin. I nearly cried. I didn't realise that things were about to get worse. And on that cliffhanger, you know I like a cliffhanger, I'm going to leave it there. See you all soon. Bye.